there is honestly, to call it what it is, a colossal smear campaign going on right now from right-wing media like Fox News against this notion of harm reduction when it comes to substance abuse and addiction. So let's start the story here with Tucker Carlson. So Tucker Carlson goes out on his show, and he effectively says, Biden has like a free crack pipes policy for people, which he argues is like incentivizing drug use. Here, I'll read you this from the Daily Mail. Quote, okay. Biden administration is promoting drug addiction. Tucker Carlson slams policy to hand out free crack pipes and needles, warning it will, quote, result in addicts shooting up on the streets. That's literally exactly wrong. The whole point is so that they don't shoot up on the streets. Right. That's the whole point of having the harm reduction center. So anyway, we'll get into more of this. Tucker Carlson mocked the Biden administration's plan to distribute safe smoking kits to underserved communities on his show Tuesday night. Carlson doubled down on claims the administration would distribute crack pipes and said they were promoting drug addiction. The White House said crack pipes were never going to be distributed. We'll get into that too. Carlson also poked fun at Hunter Biden's past addiction and said Biden was doing little to fight the opioid crisis because victims were, quote, mostly white. Fellow Fox host Sean Hannity also blasted the administration of U.S. Senator John Kerry of Louisiana, called the plan, quote, stupid. So, in response to this, like, free crack pipes for all from the Biden administration attack, which, by the way, did catch fire. It was big on social media, big on right-wing media. They were talking about it nonstop. They thought they really had one where they could pounce. A bunch of Republican senators weighed in on it as well. In response to this, the Biden administration comes out and goes, no. There are no free crack pipes. We don't know what you guys are talking about. Yeah, we have this $30 million thing for harm reduction for addicts and stuff, but the idea was never to have any crack pipes in there at all.
Yeah.
Turns out that's actually not true. In some instances, yes, it does include crack pipes.
Okay, so this comes from language in this grant proposal that suggested that the federal funds might be used, among many other things, including syringes and condoms and medication lockboxes and fentanyl testing strips and naloxone, that one of the items that might be funded is, quote unquote, safe smoking kits / supplies.
Let me give you the quote.
Okay.
Can I give you the quote?
Yeah.
No federal funding will be, quote, no federal funding will be used directly or through subsequent reimbursement of grantees to put pipes in safe smoking kits, Health and Human Services Secretary Xavier Becerra and White House Drug Policy Advisor Rahul Gupta said in a joint statement.
Yes.
So notice the careful wording.
Yes. Right.
Directly.
Right. And also, I'm very familiar with the policy of safe injection sites and needle exchanges and those sorts of things. I had honestly never heard of safe smoking kits, so I looked into what this was and if these are in distribution use across the country. There are some places that distribute safe smoking kits, although it is not all that common. And in some of those instances, they do include crack pipes, safe crack pipes, and in some of them, they don't. The other kits will have things like alcohol wipes and whatever to make sure that whatever you're using is clean and safe. And so that's what they're trying to say is like our safe smoking kits would be the kind that didn't have the crack pipes in them. But the larger point is that they just like instantly cave to the right-wing narrative.
Here's the thing. You're never going to satiate the right on this point, because they have what intuitively feels like the common sense position. Mm-hmm. The common sense, I don't want the government giving people drugs or drug paraphernalia. I don't want people getting crack pipes. I don't want people getting needles. I don't want my tax money going to this. And look, I admit at face value, absolutely. In fact, I was against these safe injection sites for the longest time. But then you know what? I learned about them. And when I learned about them, I found out very quickly they are phenomenally successful. So look, the main claim is, well, now you're just incentivizing people to check out of life and go do crack or go inject heroin at one of these safe injection sites. There is absolutely no expansion of people who want to do the drug. The bottom line is people who want to do the drug are going to do the drug. The question is, do you want them to do it in a way where it's safe, where you don't transmit disease, where you don't overdose and die instantly?
Yeah.
Or do you want them to do it on the street where that does happen? And so just to put this in perspective for everybody, because this is a real world problem, I covered this on my show recently. New York City opened the first 2 supervised drug injection sites, and they've already reversed, in 2 months, they've already reversed 114 overdoses. That's 114 lives that otherwise would have definitely been lost. But now, because you have the harm reduction center, it's literally in the name, harm reduction, you're able to save their lives. And so it's such a cheap point for the right to make. Oh, you want to give people free crack pipes? You want to give people free needles? And the Biden administration, just packed full of cucks and sheer cuckery, immediately caved over, like, no, we don't want to have a crack pipes for them, not at all. We don't want to do that at all.
Well, there's a long history, and there's actually a lot to unpack here, because there's a long history in this country, too, of treating some drugs like they're fine, or like it's okay if they're like party drugs and they're associated more with like upper class people and disproportionately white people, and other drugs are treated in a different way. Obviously, like the government policy codification of the crack, cocaine, the sentencing disparity, which Joe Biden was involved with, is classic example of how different categories of drugs are treated and viewed in very different ways, something that Dr. Carl Hart talked to us about. And so in Tucker's comments, it's interesting and very revealing that at the same time that he's, making a lot of hay out of free crack pipe distribution, he's also saying, you're not doing anything about the opioid crisis, but needle exchanges and safe injection sites and those sorts of, that's directly has to do with the opioid crisis. And not only that, we've had such an issue, a devastating addiction crisis that has claimed so many lives in this country and in a lot of red states, that even a lot of Republicans have gotten on board with some of these measures. So when Mike Pence was governor of Indiana, extraordinarily belatedly, after they had, a very significant HIV outbreak in his home state from people sharing needles, he even eventually, again, way too late, got on board with a needle exchange. And so I think because the opioid crisis affected people so broadly, affected red states, affected a lot of white Americans, the white working class was really hit hard by this first and foremost. There had been a little bit of an evolution in how Republicans were approaching and talking about the war on drugs. And so this represents just a total regression to absolute 100%, 90s style war on drugs rhetoric. And that's what, to me, is really troubling, because it starts with just attacking the crack pipes, which, you hear that and you're like, well, that's silly and that's ridiculous and the government shouldn't be funding that, et cetera, et cetera. But when you accept the argument that harm reduction measures are a ridiculous, absurd, immoral waste of government funds, well, then that bleeds over to your whole harm reduction approach. And that's what I find to be so ugly about this.
I mean, the point you made is such a wonderful point, Krystal, because that's the heart of it. The heart of it is he's saying, well, you're not even doing anything about the opioid crisis. You're literally attacking the thing right now that is to address the problem that you say you care about.
Yeah.
Just to score some cheap political points. I mean, and the other thing is, they say, he says, he's so concerned about the opioid crisis. The do-gooders reacted to the opioid crisis by cracking down on the pills, and then everybody moved on to fentanyl, and now more people are dying. So if you're going to address problems, which you should, you have to do it in an intelligent way, and you have to look at the data. And the bottom line is, empirically, the harm reduction sites reduce harm. That's just a fact.
Yeah.
And I get it. Look, if you're sitting out there and you're resistant to the idea, I understand it, because, again, at face value, intuitively, it sounds wrong. Government's going to give out free crack pipes, or government's going to, give out free needles. I get it. At face value, it doesn't sound good. But when you see it saves, in the long run, over the course of a year, if you have them all around the country, it will literally save tens of thousands of lives. And those are people who are sons and daughters and brothers and sisters, and they're people, and they matter. So you know what the Biden administration should have done to this backlash? Puff their chest out and say, you're right. That's exactly what we're doing, because we're going to save tens of thousands of lives because we care about these people. They're our fellow Americans. They're our brothers and sisters. Their lives matter. They matter. And because you guys want to do a cheap racist panic where you say, oh, crack pipes for all. That's the racial angle too, like you said.
Yeah.
On the one hand, oh, I care about the opioid crisis, but not the crack part.
Right.
But not the crack part.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, oh God, it's just so, and it's a win for them too. Because look, most of the issues we talk about on this show, on my show, on your show, we take positions that are poll very well. I understand that. That's very true. This is one where I freely admit, probably on the losing side of it, that I come out here and say, yeah, free crack pipes. Yeah, free needles. I get it. That's not going to poll well. But you make the argument because It empirically works, and that's all that matters.
Yeah, well, this is where like having actual leadership matters. And this is what Democrats do all the time is something will get completely demonized by the right and they'll make a whole thing about it. And this is huge in the bloodstream of the right-wing media ecosystem over the course of this week. It's a huge story for them. It wasn't just Tucker. It was, all kinds of different outlets writing it up and all kinds of Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio jumping on top of it and whatever. And usually the response from the liberal media outlets is just like, we're just not going to say anything about it and hope this thing goes away. And that's usually the response from the Democratic politicians too, of like, let's just hope that this sort of dies down because we know that's an uncomfortable one for us. And what that does is it just completely seeds the terrain. And so there is no alternative argument being offered in like mainstream media ecosystem. And so then, anyone who hears about it, they're only hearing the right-wing narrative about it. And so, that's how they end up winning on these culture war issues over and over. They're so good at finding these little things like this. I mean, this is like one little bullet point in a grant proposal, and they turn it into a whole very, very successful news cycle for them, which again, like, on the merits of this one policy, was this going to be a game changer in the war on drugs? No. But is it incredibly damaging in terms of how we were starting to evolve in our thinking about how to treat addiction? Yeah, there was a little bit of an opening there because of the way that the opioid crisis hit so many people. The other angle that the Tucker Carlsons of the world, the obvious answer here is to end the war on drugs, and that's the only answer ultimately that's going to deal with any of this. And you can look around the world and see very clear evidence that that is the case because we've been interdicting heroin for over 100 years. Like, cutting off the supply is never, ever going to work. You just go to the more and more concentrated form, which is why we have fentanyl. Their other answer is just like border enforcement, stop the shipments in at the border. And again, that has never worked throughout history, and it never will work. So ultimately, even as they have feigned control over the opioid crisis, they have never offered any sort of a solution that would actually deal with the pain and suffering that has caused.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. It's just amazing to me that just to try to stop the bad optics from continuing, the response was like, no. We don't even believe in it. You're right. He is a drug warrior.
He's honestly being more ideologically honest in the backtrack. Right. He's not committed to this. That's right. This guy could deschedule marijuana and a whole lot of other things while he's at it. And he won't do it. He promised to do it in the campaign trail. So, to me, I'm shocked they even put this out there because this is ideologically consistent with who Joe Biden has been his entire career.
But, it's so stunning to me, though, because you have two right-wing factions in the U.S. just totally agreeing in unison when this is an area where we actually found an answer that works. And they're just like, nah, no, not going to do it. Don't want to do it because, the optics of it are bad and it's free crack pipes for all or free needles for all.
Yeah.
It's like, do you care that it's going to save tens of thousands of lives and you don't have people, literally, the streets will be dirtier if you let people just go out there and do it. People sharing needles, people sharing pipes, people getting diseases, people overdosing. Yeah. All of those things we all agree are bad. But then when the solution is a little counterintuitive, all of a sudden everybody becomes like a 7 IQ loser.
And the problem, the other good thing with safe injection sites is that then you have people connected to, if they do want to
get off,
if they want to get off,
that's right.
They're connected to system and resources in the ideal circumstance where they can be on a pathway and have support in doing that. That's the other important piece.
Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You want to.